All right. I think we are live. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight at Mysterious Galaxy. We're joined by Chris Whitaker to celebrate the release of We Begin at the End. Really, really exciting thriller that I can tell in the comments some of you have already read, are super excited to hear him talk about it. And we're also joined by John Hart, who's going to be the in conversation partner. My name's Matt. I'm going to be your Vanna White for the evening. So just a little housekeeping. If you haven't already read and bought the book, you can do so and get signed book plates, which are an amazing thing to have right now during quarantine when you don't get to go and physically meet the author. So there's the buy book with signed book plate button down below. If you have a question for either of the authors, you can do so by hitting the Ask a Question button and doing so there. And in the latter half of the conversation, they'll be taking your questions, and I know they're looking forward to them. And I think that's it. So I'm going to hand it off to John and Chris, and you guys have a great talk, and I'll be back at the end.
All right. Thank you, Matt. I'm going to start us off. First of all, Chris, I like to set the tone. I think any one of these events should begin with the tone, and here's the tone. The book's fabulous. It's fantastic. Anyone out there that has not read it, buy the book, read it, tell your friends. I was lucky enough to get an advance copy. Chris, it's been a long time. I mean, 7 or 8 months, I suspect, since I read it. I still remember it. One of the hallmarks of a great novel to me, and I suspect this is true about you, and we'll probably touch base on this, is that I'm a deep believer in character-driven fiction, and I believe that you're the same way. And here's the reason I know that's true. The books that I remember long after I've read, what I remember is not necessarily the plot. It's the people that I got to know during the journey. And I remember the people that you created so well. And so this is how I know you're a character. You know, you care about characters. And I think that makes a difference. So I'm delighted to be here to have a chance to talk with you. I know you're somewhere far away and it's the middle of the night. We'll talk about that in just a second. So why don't we start there? Tell us, give us a word picture. Where are you? What ungodly hour are you up and speaking to us? And we'll go from there.
Okay, so the ungodly hour is it's 3 a.m. over here. I was planning. I thought I'll go to sleep beforehand, set an alarm. So I lay down in bed, set like 5 different alarms because I was so worried that I was going to wake up and have missed the event. But our daughter yesterday, perfect timing, 2 of her teeth came through. So when none of us are sleeping, so I've been awake, so I'm fine though. But we're having massive building work done at the moment, so I had nowhere to work. So I built a log cabin at the end of the garden, end of our backyard. And it was finished yesterday, actually. So and I'm not very good at building, so I don't really know what I'm doing. But I found this flat pack kit thing that I could build myself, and we're all locked down anyway. So I thought I'm just going to go for it. And you know, if this back wall falls down during this, you just carry on, John. Okay.
Okay. I almost hope it happens just to see it. Okay, so I don't know if this is a trade secret. The accent gives a little bit of away, but I assume you're in the UK somewhere. Can you tell us where you are?
Yeah, so I'm in a small town called Sawbridgeworth, which no one really knows. Actually, so the Beckhams used to live here, David Beckham, and they built this giant house in this small town, and it's called Beckingham Palace. But they moved out. It's just outside London, so we're like 30 minutes from London, from the city.
So I lived in London for 6 months when I was 21 years old. It was a hell of a time. We won't get into that right now, but I love where you are. It's a fun place to be.
Yeah, it's a strange place at the moment. With I suppose the whole world is strange, but yeah, I miss going into town. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. Well, look, you've got a backyard and a garden. You're better off than a lot of my friends in New York that are in 5th floor walk-ups, 900 square feet with 3 kids. So that's not good. I'm lucky enough to be on 150 acres in Central Virginia, I walk around all the time, and I see no one, and it's lovely. It's just me and the dogs. All right, let's talk about this. This is your third book. We begin at the end. Can you tell me real quickly the names of the first two? I've not read them.
The first one is Tall Oaks, and the second one is All the Wicked Girls. And it's been I think it's been about 4 years since the last one came out. So,
and when was the first one? When did this journey begin for you?
2014, I think, off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that I remember from an earlier conversation, and just for those watching, Chris and I have never spoken face to face. This is the first. We have exchanged some emails. Do we have a career path in common? Do I remember that correctly? Were you?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell the story now about how I got into writing.
Yes, please.
And just for context, I've been kind of stalking John for ages and sending emails and bombarding him, and I finally got him.
You were eminently polite. You were eminently polite. I mean, I couldn't wait to read your book. You were so kind about it.
Thank you. Right. So I back when I was at school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had no real idea. All my friends had a good idea, going to be a doctor, lawyer, things like that. I just wasn't one of those people. And my parents would probably say I didn't apply myself. That's how they'd word it at school. And I messed up my exams, my economics exam. I got really drunk the night before because I was 18, had those sort of friends. And I missed the exam the next day, so I failed. And my parents were thrilled about that. And then I didn't go to university because didn't have the grades. Nothing really appealed anyway. So I bounced from job to job. I did a lot of bartending, things like that, just trying to find my way, really. And I was working as a real estate agent, and I was out dropping leaflets through people's doors. And someone came up to me and asked to borrow my phone in the street. It was this quiet road in London. And I kind of knew how it was going to go, because I'd been I'd had friends that had been mugged, things like that. London's a big city, things happen all the time. And I didn't want to give it. And I was 19 and kind of too brave at the time. And so I put up a fight, and we kind of had a fight for a while, and I was holding my own. And then he pulled out a kitchen knife and stabbed me in the side a few times. And it was really bad. Like one of the times it was a big knife, and it went through my side, kind of came out the other side. So it was pretty bad. And I dropped my phone, dropped my wallet. He dropped the knife. And
sounds like a good trade.
Yeah, he picked up everything and ran off, and kind of left me standing there in the street bleeding, and managed to get myself to hospital, and they stitched me back together again. And that's when the real problems kind of began. Everyone took the view that I'd been lucky, and I didn't feel all that lucky at the time. But I got it. It could have been worse. But there was kind of this feeling that I should have been okay, and I should have just got on with things. And my friends kind of slapped me on the back, told me I'd done the right thing. Obviously I tell my kids nowadays I've got 3 kids, I tell them to run, just give whatever they, it's a phone, it's a wallet, it's not worth dying over. But so I didn't know anything about PTSD. I didn't know, it wasn't a thing that would, come into my life or anything like that. So I ignored all the signs, and there were a lot of signs. They were like, I couldn't read a book, couldn't concentrate on anything, didn't eat, just kind of withdrew. I was just on my own all the time. But to my parents and friends, I remember, I'm quite good at fronting. So I remember just, smiling through it. But things, they were really bad. Like I was drinking, taking drugs, doing things I shouldn't. And I drove my car off the road on purpose, and I was very drunk and flipped it over and had a really tough time. Again, for the second time, I was stitched back together. And my mum was really disappointed. I remember having a chat with her, and I really wanted to tell her what was going on, but she just thought I was, a kind of boys being boys thing. And then I started hoarding painkillers because I thought, I'm not going to beat this. I'm not going to find a way out of this. And I sat down one night and I set out to write them a note to my mum and dad, just kind of explaining what I was going through. And then I remembered in the local library, I'd borrowed a book, and it was kind of like self-help therapy. And it told me of this technique where you sit down and you change the people involved. You write about what happened, the traumatic incident, you change the people involved, change the outcome, change the location, change everything about it. And it's like an exercise. And I gave it a go, and I wrote the character of Duchess. You know, she kind of appeared on the page, that she's the star of We Begin at the End. And it was strange. And I wrote a bit more, went to sleep and slept that night for the first time in ages. And the more I wrote, it wasn't like a quick fix. It kind of went on for another year or so, but I wrote a bit more every night, and it wasn't a story, you know, as we know it. It was just kind of disjointed, this series of scenes that I was writing, and it became like a diary almost. So however I was feeling, I would kind of project onto these characters that I was writing. And so a year went by, and then I started to give some thought to what next. And I went and worked in the city. You know, I went into stockbroking because I saw a picture of a stockbroker with a Ferrari, and I thought, this is the life for me. You know, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just thought, you know, I want to be rich. This must be easy, which is ridiculous because I'm terrible at maths, no qualifications. Went into the city with my CV and managed to talk my way into a job, like an entry-level, terrible job. It was like cold calling this terrible stocks to people, and I didn't last very long, but I eventually found my way into a trading job, and I got onto a trading desk, and my boss said to me, if you lose $2 million, if you lose $20,000, you stop trading. That's the only rule. So the next day I came into work and lost $2 million pretty much straight away, and didn't tell anyone about it because, you know, I thought one of my friends worked in the back office, so I thought I can make this back, which is ridiculous because I wasn't very good. So I lost a bit more, and this kind of went on I didn't tell anyone. And one day I came into work and everyone was in the boardroom sitting there, you know, the bosses, lawyers, things like that. So I thought, I'm in serious trouble, and I was in serious trouble. They kind of sat me down and said, if you pay back half of it, we won't go to the police. And I'd started making money at that point for them. So they let me carry on trading. So I signed a contract there and then, and went home at 24 years old in $1 million of debt. Didn't tell my wife. Well, I was engaged at the time. And my now wife thought I was doing really well. So I just kept everything quiet. Again, everyone thought I was successful. Everyone thought I was doing okay. And I had this horrible secret and this horrible debt. And I went back to this story again. I went back to writing to get me through it. And then, you know, years passed before I managed to pay it back, kind of worked off the debt. And it was just before my 30th birthday that I read a book called The Last Child. I can't remember who wrote that one, John.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. I mean,
so I read that book, and it was kind of a life-changing moment. It was, you know, it's a very special book. It you know, it kind of changed everything for me. And I read an interview with you not long afterwards, and you talked about how you kind of gave up a successful career to write. And the day after I read that interview, I was called into my boss's office and offered a promotion, and I quit my job there and then because you did the exact same thing. So my wife was pregnant at the time. So I came home and said, I'm going to write a book. I've quit my job. So she was, this was the first she'd ever heard of it. You know, that as far as she knew, I'd never written anything. So it was a shock, but she was, you know, very supportive eventually. She blames you for a lot of, you know, our financial troubles that we've had over the years.
Well, let me just interject. One of the things that I remember you said to me in one of our first conversations about my reading, We Begin at the End, you told me in an email that you had written 2 books and your wife had been terribly supportive, but this was getting long, and I think he said, "Please tell me it gets better."
Mm-hmm.
And I told you the story. I said, what made the difference for me was my third novel, The Last Child, that you're talking about. That's when things, really changed for me. And I truly, honestly believe then and now that this is the same thing for you, that We Begin at the End is that pivotal moment for you. So, kudos to your wife for sticking by your side. Mine was the same way. I mean, we're blessed to have women like that in our lives. So, but I know it didn't happen overnight. I mean, so you talked to your wife, you told her that you think you want to write a book, you've quit your job. It wasn't We Begin at the End. It wasn't Duchess, one of the greatest characters. So what happened then? I mean, first book, is your wife on board? Is she afraid? What's going on in the life of Chris Whitaker?
Yeah, so almost overnight, everything changed. We had a fairly comfortable life. But then all of us, I had no income. Just like that. So we sold our apartment that we were living in, sold our car. We moved to Spain for a while because we had no overheads really. We just wanted to get away. The cost of living was low. We wanted to live somewhere warm by the sea. So we went over there for a year, and I got to work on Tall Oaks, my debut, and we had children. Then we came back, and I didn't know anything about how you get published. I don't know if the same was for you, but I didn't even know you needed a literary agent or anything like that.
Nobody knows. At that stage, nobody knows.
Yeah, and had I known how difficult it is, I'm not sure I would have done it. Had I started, because you go onto the internet and there's a lot of stories about people trying to get published, trying to get agents. The odds are kind of stacked,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I did. But yeah, it was looking back on it now, kind of all these. It's only recently that I've really looked back on all these times in my life and kind of the things I've done, and a variation of this story that I've just told you appeared in The Guardian over here, and that was the first time my parents knew anything about it. They kind of read about it in the newspaper, which so I got a call from my dad kind of frantically, saying, "Is this true?" Even though it clearly was, because I'd written the article for them. But I think it was you think your children quite well, and you hope that they will come to you in times of trouble, and I think it was tough for them. And my wife as well, a lot of it, she didn't know about the debt I'd been in and stuff like that until recently. And it's kind of made me evaluate why I feel the need to project, or felt the need to project, and tell everyone I'm okay and not worry them. And, I'm quite bad at asking for help.
Look, I think that matters. I did my best work when I had something to prove, whether it was to my parents, who were very traditional and filled with doubt that this writing thing was a good idea, or to my lawyer colleagues or my stockbroker colleagues that said, who do you think you are? You think you're the next John Grisham? I mean, they'd literally get aggressive and in my face. And, they didn't understand. I mean, people that don't write or aspire to this job, this career, this life, they don't understand how badly we want it and how badly you have to want it to actually succeed in doing it. It's not something you can phone in, right? I mean, it's something that you got to really commit your everything to, and you have to have the right support structure. So when your parents read this article, I mean, were they on board? Were they, like, in terms of your career? I understand that there were other parts here, but were they excited about what you were doing? Have they always been supportive? I mean, mine struggled.
Yeah, mine struggled. Mine, yeah, they kind of, they called it I remember a few times that they called it a hobby, which.
My mother said, and I love my mother, but she said, "Don't quit your day job. You will never get published," which is not something one wants to hear from one's mother when undertaking something as dangerous as walking away from an established career.
Yeah, I had some of that. I had, there was a level of, what are you doing? You're 30 years, you're nearly 30 years old. You should be heading in the direction you want to be heading, and you don't change direction at that point. And they were supportive, but I don't know if they, my dad kind of, till very recently, talk to me about, finding another job, or, what is your long-term plan kind of thing. Because, I've got 3 kids now. Our daughter was born last summer, and I think he was worried because I still trade in the stock market, and I work in the local library, and I write, and it's like a 7-day-a-week thing, and it has been for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I don't spend an awful lot of time with the kids, and I think they were concerned about that. But but things have changed recently. It feels like We Begin at the End is a debut. It certainly is in the US.
Well, no, it is. It is. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, those of us that are in the industry that follow the journals, and we have our ear to the ground, and we know what people are talking about. They're talking about this book and this guy Chris Whitaker, and I mean, there's all kinds of great stuff happening. I know Barnes and Noble made it a book club pick. Mm-hmm. Tell us about Disney. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and it kind of came out of nowhere. It was, I guess there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I've got a brilliant agency. I've been with my agent for a long time now. And I kind of just out of the blue got these messages saying, will I sit down, meet with Warner Brothers, meet with Sony Pictures, meet with Disney? I was like, yeah, brilliant. Of course I will. I thought they were playing a joke on me or something like that. So I'd work my day shift in the library, then come home and sit down and listen to these Hollywood studios say all these lovely things to me. And I met with them, and then Disney, Tommy Cale is one of the producers, and I saw Hamilton a while ago, and I thought it was, I thought it was brilliant, masterfully done. I was a big fan, and they really got the book, and they got the character of Duchess, and they got what I was trying to do, and it just clicked, and it felt, like I'm a firm believer in going with your heart on, and gut feeling, as you probably can guess from the stories that I've told. If something feels right or doesn't feel right, then I do something about it, and Disney felt right. They felt right for this, and I'm absolutely thrilled, and I've known about it for probably a month now. So I've been dying to tell everyone, and then finally yesterday it was announced. And
okay, so what was announced? Are we talking about feature film?
TV.
TV. Okay, so a series, limited series, something good like that. Beautiful. Look, nobody's making feature films in COVID times. There are no theaters around. I mean, streaming is where it is. So that's super crazy, super exciting. I have to ask you this though, because this is what puzzles me, energizes me. Listening to you talk about when you were dealing with your PTSD after the mugging, the stabbing, and you started channeling into this character, Duchess. And I'm going to ask you in just a minute to give us the 90-second elevator description of We Begin at the End for those that haven't read it. Mm-hmm. But you then wrote 2 novels that, as far as I'm aware, had nothing to do with Duchess. Duchess is the unbelievably compelling lead of this 3rd novel, We Begin at the End. Why did it take 2 books to come to Duchess? Were you nervous? And here's the reason I ask, because we have so many things in common. You mentioned The Last Child earlier. My concern in writing that was I was writing a novel about a 13-year-old boy that I intended to drive the narrative of an adult-themed novel, which is not easy to do. Normally they end up as a YA kind of thing. And so it's a risk. Right out of the gate, you're taking a fundamental risk, creating a novel around a kid. It's got to be the right kid with the right motivations and utterly believable, which Duchess is. Did you just need time to find your way to this character, and you weren't ready with those first 2 books? I mean, why is Duchess appearing in book 3, and how did you feel about the pressures inherent in creating what I would call, it's a big book. It's a big book built around a little person. How did you feel about that? Yeah,
I resisted writing the book because I didn't think I can. I didn't think it was a book. It sounds strange, but it's a 13-year-old girl, but it feels very personal. So just reading back over some of the early notes, I remember a difficult time in my life, and I needed, with Tall Oaks, I needed to get away from that. I needed to see if I could write something fresh and new, and see what would happen if I could do it. And then I wrote the first 2 books and kind of came to the end of my first book contract, a 2-book deal. And I gave some thought about what I wanted to do next, because they weren't massively successful or anything like that. They were critically successful, but that we both know that doesn't always translate, to anything in, sales or anything like that. And I had this idea for this book, centered around Duchess. And I thought I either go for it now or I just bury it forever. And it just becomes this thing, this character that I created because I needed, a level of transference at the time. I'll put it to one side. But I started writing it, without telling anyone, without telling my editor what I was doing or anything like that. And then I kind of pitched this book very loosely. I said, I've got this book about a 13-year-old girl in California and Montana and places that I've never visited, and you could see the nervous look on their faces. And then I battled with it for years, off and on, probably a couple of decades to write the book in total, but solid years just writing Duchess, writing her dialogue, her character, rewriting it and everything like that. And then I delivered a rough draft, which was read by Amy Einhorn at Henry Holt, my editor. And then I love that part of it, because you're kind of on your own for so long and you're doing this job, and then all of a sudden it's like calling for backup, and you get the help of these amazing people, and they help me to see, the story I was trying to tell and what I wanted to achieve in it. And we got there in the end. And I'm really glad we did, because it feels like some sort of closure as well on that chapter in my life. It feels like I can begin to move on, without looking back.
Wow. That's great. That's a great story. I mean, really, it truly is. I'm guessing, since you're talking of closure, we're probably not going to see Duchess in a sequel. Are you on to something else?
Yes, I'm writing the new book. It's kind of, I don't know where it fits, but it feels, there's a mystery element at its heart, but it feels like a love story, a big love story, which I enjoy writing. But I don't know, unless, I suppose it's like you with Johnny, unless you have something credible that you can do and say, and something real that you can do with the character, like you did, you leave it alone for a while, and see, I don't want to do it for the sake of it, because the book is selling well or anything like that. That would be the wrong reason to write another story, I think, with the same characters. But it's been hard to, I never write the end when I'm finished writing, ever, because it doesn't feel like the end. It feels like, it's a snapshot of these characters' lives at a given point in time. And never say never.
Did you struggle with the title? Because it's a great title, and great titles are hard to come by. They rarely spring full formed. The Last Child is one of the few books I've written where I knew the title on page 1. I mean, I knew it. And in fact, when I delivered it to my publisher, they before they even read it, they said, "This is a horrible title. We'll never use this title. Child in Peril is not going to sell." Then they read the book and they said it can't be called anything else. This is perfect. That's unusual for me. Normally I struggle with titles. Did you always have We Begin at the End?
I had it. So there's a kind of prologue bit at the beginning, just a page or two at the very start of the story, and it occurs 30 years before the rest of the story. And I just called that We Begin at the End, that part of it. Because I hadn't successfully named one of my books before, because whatever I've chosen to call it, the sales team get involved and other people decide, there's a better title, and they're right. But this one, I wanted the title, so I kind of put it there hoping they would take it, and the line appears a few times in the book, and it just felt like the right title. It felt like it fit really well, because you have these characters that kind of can't outrun this dreadful thing that happened in their past. And it's like we do begin at the end of their story. So I was very happy with the title, and it's not an overtly anything title. It's not a thriller title, or it's just it just fits the story.
Look, from so many different perspectives, it's the greatest title, because a good title should create a question in someone's mind. It should fit the story. This does both of those things. And yet the title threads the needle between sort of literary fiction and more commercial fiction, which I think is a fair description of what you've written. I mean, it has strong literary elements. I mean, the language, the characterizations, the backstories, all of those great meaty things that we love. But you don't want to put the book down. It's really compelling. I'm going to say a quick word. We've been talking for 30 minutes. There are 4 questions in the queue. I'm not going to go to the questions yet because you and I were not done, and 4 questions is not enough. So if anyone watching has questions, pop them in. Chris and I are going to speak for a few more minutes, and then we'll get to some questions. So do you want to talk about the book you're writing now? Or is it too early? I'm always a little bit nervous and superstitious about discussing what I'm working on. So if that's not something you want to do, that's fine.
Yeah, it feels very early. It feels yeah, it's not anything at the moment. It's just the scenes that I want to write. I don't know how you do it, if you write in order or anything like that, but I generally don't start at the beginning. I tell the parts of the story that feel like they need to be told on that given day.
Sometimes you begin at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I got some good news a few weeks ago. You and I now have a publishing house in the UK.
Yeah.
About Bonnier.
Congratulations. It's very cool.
It is very cool. I'm super excited about it. I have a history with Kate Parkin, who's the managing director there, and we've known each other for a lot of years. So I'm happy to be coming over, and I'm super impressed with what they've done with you. So that's pretty awesome.
So I'm going to ask them if I can interview you at some point.
Oh God, please! I'd love it. I really would. So let's talk Disney for a little bit, because I've always thought that one of the sort of fantasies for novelists like us, and you're in your log cabin at the end of your garden, and I'm on these empty acres in Virginia, and we work alone day in and day out. And it sounds like this super sexy job, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, I would do nothing else. I consider it kind of the ultimate expression of personal freedom, but it is a lonesome business for the most part. That few people understand. So this idea of seeing your story turned into a streaming series or into a feature film is kind of a big deal, right? And you get to go and see your words brought to life by other creatives, whether they're the actors, screenwriters, directors. It's kind of an amazing thing. Would you be excited about going on set when this happens? Is that something that you think about, or are you just like...
It's something that I thought that I dreamed about, and I had done for a long time. And then when it came along, I all of a sudden thought this story won't belong to me, or that it might get taken in, because some of the studios pitched very unique ideas for the way to bring it to screen, and things I hadn't ever considered. And I suppose it's having some time to get your head around that, and you picture the characters as you write them. They don't exist yet. In the real world, they're not a Hollywood actor or something like that. And that part of it is strange, isn't it? It's to think of it, it's very exciting though, and that's why Disney was such a good fit, I think, just because we shared a vision, and they wanted to create a series how I would do it, based around Duchess, and and with kind of the mystery element sitting alongside, just this look at these two characters' lives, Duchess and the police chief in the town that she lives in. And so I'm really, really excited about it. And it's very early days, but they have said, I can be involved creatively, which is really cool. So,
see, I'm excited to hear that, because the old saw is that you need to imagine this great tall fence, and the novelist approaches from one side and Hollywood from another, and a bag of money is lobbed over the fence, and everyone goes in their different directions, and you don't get that creative say. So I'm really excited to hear that. Let me do this. We've got 6 questions in the queue and a little bit of time, and we can continue to riff on these themes. But I did at least hint to our viewers that they would get, some 90-second, elevator description of the book. And my point is, I want you to sell this book. I want these people to go out and buy it and tell their friends. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. Everybody, it's a big book. It's hard to synopsize. If you don't want to do that and just say, look, trust me, I'll tell everybody you should trust him. It's a good book. It's worthy, 100% worthy of being read. Do you care to give a brief description?
Of course I do, John. Of course I do. That's what we do, isn't it? We get
it is what we do. But it's hard to take 18 months, 2 years of work, or in your case, and I don't even know how many hours and days, and condense it that way. Not everybody wants to do it. So, but if you will, I'd actually like to hear it, and I suspect others would too.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the way that I see the story, and it might be different from the way my publisher or publicist see the story. But it's a story that follows a year in the life of a 13-year-old girl named Duchess, and the local police chief Walker in the town that she lives in Northern California on the coast. And it sounds like they might not have a lot in common, but they're both kind of struggling, very much alone, very much battling with this event that happened long before. It's 30 years ago, long before Duchess was born. Her niece was killed, and the policeman was best friends with the killer, who's now been released from prison after 30 years, and he's coming back to this small town, and Duchess is she's sailing through life on this fragile ship. She's the sole carer for her younger brother, 5-year-old brother, and her mother is an addict. And she knows this man was in her mother's life, was kind of her mother's love interest when she was younger. And so she's terrified something bad's going to happen because they're just about surviving. And she decides to take action. And that action kind of has this big ripple effect throughout the whole town, throughout everyone close to her, and ends up kind of ripping everything apart, everything that she's been holding on to. So she leaves town with her brother while the police chief is kind of left to pick up the pieces. And from there, we just see what happens to them over the course of the year. And it takes in a court case towards the end, and it takes Duchess to Montana, where she kind of has to rediscover herself and rethink her idea of family and what that word means, and how the meaning can evolve based on where you are in your life. But most of all, it's kind of a story about forgiveness and self-sacrifice, and how the mistakes and things that you do in the past can cast a big shadow, but you can also find a way to outrun that shadow. And I hope that worked.
I love when books deliver. They make a promise and they deliver, and I think this book makes a promise and it delivers. And just on a quick side note, the whole the Montana part of the book, I just loved it. I mean, it was really good. Okay, so we've been going for 40 minutes. Let me just open up for a couple questions here and see what we've got. I'm just going to go down in the order. This is not my normal thing. Alta, I think. She says, your staccato sentence fragment style at points in the book reads like slam poetry in prose form. Where does this unique and alluring writing style come from? Are there other writers who write in a similar manner who inspire you? Will you ever criticize for such a style? Keep in mind, I find it engaging and wholly unique.
That is a lovely comment. Yeah, so I read a lot of John Hart books before I wrote this one. So maybe some of the style rubs off. I'm not aware of it when I'm doing it. It's not something conscious that I set out to do. It's it kind of drives people mad. Like my copy editor, I splice commas all the time because I like the way things run together. I like to read a beautiful sentence and I like it to flow into the next sentence. And I'm aware that that's not correct English sometimes, but it bothers them more than it bothers me. It just felt like the right way to tell this story. It felt like some scenes needed to be short and sharp, and some needed, to run on. And yes, some people struggle with it. Some people, especially at the beginning, they message me and say, I love this book, but I had to battle through the first chapters, and that's fair. And that's it's just the way I wanted to tell the story.
Well, you did it beautifully. I'm a big believer that language matters and it's often ignored. So kudos to that, and great question. Okay. What was the most challenging part of your writing? We begin at the end. What was your favorite part of writing it?
Most challenging was Duchess, because I'd spent so long writing the character. And like you said, you know, it's the 13-year-old child at the start, at the center of the story. And, you know, if you don't get that right, the story isn't right. You know, if she's not believable, if people don't care about her, if she does some terrible things in the book, inadvertently, and she curses a lot as well, which some people find difficult. And that was, yeah, just getting her right, you know, just writing and rewriting her and getting to know how she would react in any given situation. That was the toughest thing about the book. The favorite scenes, like John's favorite scenes, you know, the ones in Montana, I would be having a difficult day and sometimes not get to my desk till midnight and sit down and just move between lives, you know, head to these vast open plains and get to write characters that I kind of was really passionate about writing. And yeah, I love those bits. And sometimes I'm asked to do a reading and I always try and choose a Montana passage.
Nice. Well, I've said so many times, it's a real challenge to build an adult novel around a 13-year-old kid. And man, you really did it. Okay. What sort of research did you have to do for this novel? And what was your favorite thing you learned that did not make it into the book?
Endless research, actually, because having not visited the places that I'm writing about, you know, there's a huge pressure to get that right. And I rely on my brilliant editor and copy editor to save me from mistakes and things like that. But I take it, you know, very seriously. And I work in the public library and spend many months in there, you know, just poring over history books. And Duchess refers to herself as an outlaw because she's researching a family tree and finds a link to a known outlaw from when, you know, hundreds of years back, and she kind of clutches onto this. So I did a lot of outlaw research, and some of the stories that she references are true and some are fictional, you know, to fit with the narrative. And probably, yeah, that was my favorite part of the research, you know, looking into these outlaws, and some of those didn't make the cut. But yeah, I love that side of it. I know some people see it as a chore, and it can feel like that, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. You know, every part of making a book is fascinating to me, and I love it.
It is fascinating, and I love it too. I mean, it's a real gift to be able to do this for a living. I sometimes lose track of that. You know, life gets big, things get frustrating. It's so important for us to keep track of that. All right, I'm going to keep going questions unless Matt tells us that we're out of time. This is another one from Alta. Who are your favorite writers to follow? Do you tend to avoid books similar to what you were writing while you're working on a project?
I'm like obviously I read a lot. I've read a lot of all of John's books, and I read Dennis Lehane growing up. John Grisham is a masterful storyteller. You know, I grew up reading all of John Grisham's books. I think he's so skilled, and you know, he has that gift where you start reading and you don't realize that you're halfway through the book, you know, in a matter of hours, and that's a real skill. So I admire him. And you know, I read widely now because I work in the library. I move away from crime sometimes, and I get, like John, I imagine, get sent a lot of crime fiction and mystery books and for free, which is lovely. But I sometimes feel obliged to read them all, and you know, it's a towering pile of books that you have to get through, and sometimes you lose the chance to read books that you would choose to read yourself. So I'm taking a lot more library books home now. I grew up reading crime for the most part, and Stephen King, you know, is the master of characterization, and I read it when I was about 10, and it scared me senseless.
So you mentioned John Grisham. He actually is a neighbor of mine and a good friend and a drinking buddy. About once every couple months, John and a couple other writers and I get together for 4-hour drinking lunches at the local vineyards. If you're ever in Virginia, let me know. I'll bring you to the lunch, okay? I'm sure John would love to meet you. Damien wants to know, what do you do for self-care, Chris? How do you separate yourself from your work? That's a question from Damien Jackson.
So exercise, I've discovered, is not fun, but is the key to keeping me okay and grounded and sane. And I hit the gym, when I could, often, and I go running and things like that. And it's an important, I don't enjoy it at all, but it's very important to me to keep me sane. And I kind of say, when I was writing We Begin at the End, sometimes John will probably know, when you're in the middle of the story and something isn't going right and you can't sleep at night, and it feels like, it's too much sometimes, and I'm not good at separating home life and writing and working and trading, and exercise helps me do that. But it's something I'm going to try and get better at as I write the next book. It's something I'm learning as I go along.
So Alta, I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong. She's got another question or two. After finishing your work writing the book, and I love this question, did it teach you anything you didn't expect?
I learned so much from this book, from telling this story. I learned, from my life is just unrecognizable from when I first started reading it to when first started writing it to when I finished. I suppose I learned a lot about, not worrying so much about people's perception of me. I was so bothered about my parents being proud of me and not worrying about me and thinking I had a handle on my life, that I made some bad decisions. I did some things that I shouldn't have done. And I don't know if it's an age thing, but that's obviously far less important to me now. I think doing something that you love and that makes you happy has to trump everything else. That's what I discovered.
Good. I love it when a story comes together. Jennifer Briscoe asked, will you visit Northern California in the future? She is a Northern Californian.
I will. So I'm forever on at my publisher to send me to places. But unfortunately, during lockdown, as I was supposed to be in New York in a couple of weeks' time, but that's been pushed now to the end of May, and might be pushed again depending, on when the world starts turning again. But it's 100% without a doubt I will be there, and Montana, and now obviously I'm going to come and visit John, and you were all witnesses to that invitation as well.
Oh, so it's standing. Come look, it's standing. Come. We've got lots of room. They're great hotels if you don't trust us, but we have a spot here on the farm as well. Okay, Alta, I love your enthusiasm. This is your third question. I'm not giving you any more, but this is it. Chris, you got a big fan here. What inspired you to write about places where you've never been? I used to think I could only write about places I know, that I would give away my ignorance. And then one day I remembered I have the internet and friends and can learn anything I don't know. And that realization unlocks so much possibility in my mind. What has been your experience in that regard?
Yeah, it's tough. It's definitely a tough thing to do. And you end up second guessing yourself, which can distract from, the story you're trying to tell. But when I was a kid, like my most treasured childhood memory is going to Florida to Disney with my dad, and we stood in line for one of the rides, and there was a family in front, and they were from Montana, and the guy was telling us about Montana and how it's the most beautiful place on earth, and he described it as like switching from portrait to landscape, which stuck in my mind and ended up making it into the book, and so that became an image that I held on to, whenever I was really struggling. I thought back to this time when I was truly happy when I was a kid. And then when I started writing, I needed to move away from my life. I needed to set the story a long way away from where I was living. And I needed a big canvas to tell this big story on. And America is an amazing country. It sometimes feels like a whole world within a country. And Duchess goes on this big road trip at the end between Montana and California, and it just wouldn't have worked anywhere else. But that whole write what you know thing, I've never subscribed to that. Otherwise, half the books we love wouldn't exist. So just, you write what you want to know, and you make sure you do enough research to get it right.
It is amazing how convincingly you portray Northern California and Montana. I mean, I can only assume you took the time to visit. I mean, was that all from the internet? Because I feel like I was walking right there with Duchess.
Yeah, no, I've never been to either location. That I've been to Florida, I've been to Miami. That's it in the US.
God bless the internet, man. All right, we've got one more question. This is from our hosting bookstore. Were there, and who has actually asked a few questions? I don't want to sell them short. Were there any actors you imagine playing your characters as you wrote them? And before you answer, I'm just give you a second and say this: I can never do that. I mean, I don't see. I see what's in my head. I cannot imagine anything beyond it. How is it for you?
Yeah, exactly the same. I really struggle with it, and people love to send me messages to tell me who they imagine playing the characters, and I love hearing it, and it's very cool and flattering. But they are, they are people that I've lived with, fictional characters that I've lived with for a very long time, and they exist in my head, and they look a certain way, and not like anyone in the public eye at the moment. Famous last words until they they cast someone, and then I will profess my undying love for whichever actress gets the role of Duchess. And yeah, it's suited.
It's funny, just the smaller version of audiobooks. I mean, the first time you hear your book on audio and the voices are different and the way they speak, the inflection, the emphasis on the different syllables, it's not what you heard when you wrote it. You're delighted, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm delighted to hear these talented voice actors delivering the story and to see that there's a director with a vision of how it should be done. But I'm like, no, you're doing it wrong. Come on, you did it wrong. Seeing it on the screen would be 10 times worse.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. When I first heard Tall Oaks, the audiobook, I thought, oh my God, they've got this so wrong. But George Newbern narrates We Begin at the End and is brilliant. He's done a masterful job of this one. And even from the first time I listened to it, I thought he's really nailed it. This is what I wanted. So I'm fortunate in that respect.
Do they do English voice actors in the UK, or is it just the same back and forth?
It's I remember having a decision. Kind of, they I don't know if they do this to you, but they send me a list of actors that they want to play, and then they say we strongly like this one. And you're like, okay, I'm going to strongly like that one as well. But they always choose.
I've had the same conversation about titles. I'll get 5 suggested titles, but we really like number 1. You should go with that. So running out of time, we've been going for about 55 minutes, but let me ask you this, because I know this from my own experience. There's nothing more important than your wife on this journey, because I'll speak for myself. She's my first reader. She's my first support if things are not going well. She's the first to cheer when things do go well. I assume that your wife is on for the ride here and is excited about what's happening, and you guys are feeling a wave building and you're excited about the future. There's no real question here. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I hope that you guys are enjoying this together.
Yeah, she is incredible. She has sacrificed so much so that I can be happy, and do something that, changed our life financially, and there were sacrifices made. And she probably, when I met her, I was working in the city, and she subscribed to that version of me, and she's just been amazing. I owe her so much. She's a brilliant mother, and I wish she could see this. Actually, she's asleep inside, and I would have got really brownie points for this.
Good for her. I mean, it's important. I think we've walked that path together as well, Chris. It's important. Matt, hello.
Chris, don't worry. Your wife can watch this on replay. This will be here in perpetuity.
Excellent.
I have to say, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I feel like you guys are best friends. This has just been wonderful to listen to you guys go back and forth. Obviously, I'm here to promote the fact that everyone here should buy the book, which again, you can do at the buy link down below and get a signed book plate. But yeah, I just want to share my excitement over this. This is at the top of my TBR pile, my to be read pile. thrillers and mystery are new genres for me to be into, but man, I've gotten into them so much this last year with lockdown, and they really kept me going. So I'm really, really excited to get into this one. And yeah, do either of you have anything else to plug while we have a captive audience still?
I just buy the book. It's awesome. You will never regret it. It's a great read. Yeah, it's a great read. You'll never regret it, and you'll never forget it. It's a good book. Great book.
And John's new book, The Unwilling, comes out in the UK on Monday. So I don't know if it's out in the US yet. The Unwilling.
It's been out for a few weeks now. Yeah, maybe almost a month. Actually, exactly a month. So, yeah.
Okay, I do have one more question. As an audiobook reader, it's a good audiobook, right? Like you would recommend listening to it as an audiobook, because that's where I listen. That's how I do most of my reading.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been thrilled with the reaction to that. You know, so many people have messaged to say that George Newbern has done the best job with the story, and you know, it's just give it a go. He's a brilliant actor, and he brings the characters to life, you know, in new ways. And yeah, I'm eternally grateful to him.
I'm stoked for this. But it is super late for both of you. Chris, please go straight to sleep, as long as your child is asleep as well. And John, you too. I know it's late there. And thank you so much to both of you for joining us, and to everyone in the crowd for joining us, and all the great questions. This has been such a great event.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for the store, for the support. Chris, good luck. Seriously, I'm very excited for you.
Yeah, this has been very special for me. Thank you.
I'm sure we'll see both of you again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you guys for watching.
Bye.